Have you ever watched a sequel to a beloved franchise that didn't live up to the name? A movie that on its own might have been passable, but in the context of the series felt like a disappointment. Take The Matrix, for example. When the film first dropped, it was a game changer, redefining action cinema forever. Then came the sequels. While they didn't quite reach the heights of the original, they were still respected. But years later, we got The Matrix Resurrections. While not a total disaster, it didn't do justice to the trilogy that came before it. Fans had expectations, and in the end, those expectations just weren't met. Compared to the original three, it was easily the weakest. Now, take that same mindset and apply it to Mortal Kombat. The early 90s were a golden era for the franchise, with hit games and even a successful movie. But by the late 90s, things took a turn. A few critically panned entries and a film considered one of the worst video game adaptations in history had already damaged the brand. You'd think it couldn't sink any lower, and then, in the year 2000, it did. Just like The Matrix, Mortal Kombat carried a certain level of expectation, a standard it was supposed to uphold. But as we'll see, it wasn't protected from failure. Welcome to episode 6 of the Mortal Kombat Takeover. Today, we're going after the Black Dragon in Mortal Kombat Special Forces.
Finish her! Finish him! Fatality!
If you're new to the channel, welcome. And if you're a returning viewer, welcome back. I'm glad you're here. In case you don't know, I'm hosting a Mortal Kombat Takeover covering the games all the way from 1992 all the way to Mortal Kombat X due to the release of Mortal Kombat 2, the movie. But that's not all. Since Grand Theft Auto 6 is dropping this year, I'm also hosting the Rockstar Takeover, diving into Rockstar classics like Grand Theft Auto, Midnight Club, Max Payne, and even Bully. So if any of that speaks your language, I encourage you to subscribe to the channel to stay up to date. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up as it helps with the YouTube algorithm in pushing this video to a wider audience. With that said, let's dive into this. Before we jump in, if you haven't seen my other Mortal Kombat retrospectives, here's a quick recap to get you up to speed. Mortal Kombat began in 1992 when John Tobias and a few of his close friends pitched their creation to Midway. Initially skeptical, Midway eventually greenlit the project and the game went on to become a massive commercial hit. But it wasn't just successful, it was controversial as well. Thanks to its graphic violence, Mortal Kombat became a lightning rod for moral outrage, ultimately leading to the creation of the ESRB rating system. Following the success of Mortal Kombat 1992, Mortal Kombat 2 hit arcade and became the highest grossing arcade game of 1994. After a string of successful entries, it was time for the next installment, but behind the scenes, Mortal Kombat 3 was plagued by controversy with its actors. This would ultimately lead to Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 and Mortal Kombat Trilogy as Midway tried to course correct their mistakes. At this point, the franchise was beginning to shift gears. After MK3, Mythology Sub-Zero was released, a game that left fans with mixed feelings but was mostly seen as not great. What made things worse, Mythologies was essentially a promotional tool for Mortal Kombat 4, the series' first attempt at a 3D fighting game. While it had fans, many felt it left a lot to be desired. Now that we have a sense of the era Mortal Kombat was in, let's talk about how Special Forces came to be. Around this time, John Tobias was exploring ways to expand the lore of other characters. While promoting Mythologies, he was asked about the possibility of more Mortal Kombat Mythologies games. And here was his response. Possibly. The door is obviously left open for Mortal Kombat Mythologies, Raiden, or Liu Kang. There are so many characters with so many different stories to pick from. The next spin-off idea focused on Sonya Blade and Major Jackson Briggs. Once again, John Tobias was involved, and the game was titled Mortal Kombat Special Forces. The goal? To improve upon what Mythologies had tried to do. The same development team behind Mythologies was brought on for Special Forces, but this time, instead of using 2D side-scrolling gameplay, the game will be built in a fully 3D environment. In an interview with IGN, Tobias described the shift in gameplay. He stated, "It's not much like Mythologies, which was in essence a side-scroller. The pacing of Mythologies was more based on throwing enemies at the player, and there were really simple exploration elements. Find a key here, pick it up, go and find the door that opens. Special Forces is a little bit different in that, because you are actually traversing in a true 3D environment. We can sort of slow the pacing down a bit. We don't have to consistently throw enemies at the player. Mortal Kombat Mythologies was set up so it was a trial and error thing. You try something, you die, you go back, you try something else. This one isn't based around that at all. It's different in that sense. There's still a large exploration element. There's still a large fighting element to the game, quite obviously because it's a Mortal Kombat title. I'd say right now we're about 40 to 50% exploration and the rest is fighting. Of course, that can change a lot as we're real early in development. Who knows what it's going to end up as? With a new approach and the promise of something bigger than Mythologies, Special Forces seemed like it had potential. But as we'll see, things didn't go as planned. By 1999, when Tobias was doing interviews about the game, Special Forces was only about 30% complete. He had already begun promoting it, even discussing it while marketing Mortal Kombat 4. Just take a look at this.
How about yourself, John?
Then we're also working on a game called Mortal Kombat Special Forces, which stars Sonya.
Hi.
Hi.
Shortly after Special Forces was announced at E3, it was hit with a major setback. It was delayed. Then, just a month later, a group of key developers at Midway left the company. Among them was Dave Mikitich, who worked in graphics, and Joshua Sui, who had been connected to the franchise since Mortal Kombat 2. But the biggest departure? John Tobias himself, the main creator behind Mortal Kombat. According to Tobias, his decision to leave had been in the works for a while. After spending 10 years working nonstop at Midway, he was ready to move on. In a Tao Fang interview, he reflected on his departure and his connection to Special Forces. He said, "No, I'm not exactly sure how these events transpired, but Special Forces and us leaving didn't have too much to do with each other. Personally, I was planning to leave at some point in 99 or 2000, and at that point it seemed right for us. With the new systems coming out, I didn't want to start anything sort of midstream or..." With Tobias gone, Midway was left with an unfinished product and a tough decision to make. Now, let's take a moment to look at the gaming landscape at this time. It was the late 90s, and the original PlayStation was quickly approaching the end of its life cycle. The PS2 was on the horizon, and instead of shelving Special Forces or reworking it for next-gen hardware, Midway pushed forward, forcing changes to the game that had been showcased at E3 1998. One of the biggest changes, instead of featuring both Sonya and Jax, the new game was now focused entirely on Jax. After E3, a gaming article compared Mortal Kombat Special Forces to Metal Gear Solid, but not in a good way. The gameplay was described as underwhelming, and the article concluded with some harsh criticisms. It stated, Mortal Kombat Special Forces does not appear to be a very interesting game for casual gamers. It offers very little in terms of gameplay. For devout MK fans, the issue of MK Special Forces storyline violating the Mortal Kombat storyline is still up in the air. The game was initially supposed to take place before the first Mortal Kombat tournament, almost the same time as MK Mythologies. However, Jax and his robotic arms are in the game, which he did not have until Mortal Kombat 3. Moreover, the game allows you to kill Goro. If the game storyline is set after MK3, then Goro could not have existed in Mortal Kombat Gold. These are only a few of the MK storyline conflicts in MK Special Forces. It will be interesting if these issues are addressed in the game's cinematics. To make matters worse, the game was no longer planned as a multi-platform release. It would now be exclusive to the original PlayStation. After a long, troubled development cycle, Mortal Kombat Special Forces finally released on June 29, 2000 for the Sony PlayStation. Here is a quick spoiler alert as I'm about to tell the story behind Mortal Kombat Special Forces. Now, if you're not a fan of spoilers, please advance this video to the gameplay overview section as seen on the timeline below. Let's dive into this. The game opens up with a breakout at the Special Forces maximum security facility. Kano orchestrates the escape, freeing No-Face, Tazia, Jarek, and Tremor of the Black Dragon. Jax is quickly briefed from the situation and contacts Gemini to discuss the unfolding crisis. While en route to the scene, he warns Gemini to tell Lieutenant Sanchez not to infiltrate the warehouse just yet. Jax is only a minute away. But before the message reaches Sanchez, he and his team are wiped out. When Jax arrives at the warehouse, he finds nothing but rubble. Inside, he battles through waves of Black Dragon goons before facing off against No-Face outside. After taking him down, Jax contacts Gemini for another briefing.
Jax, I was trying to get through to you. Are you all right?
Yeah, I'm okay. I just had a little fire to snuff out. What's the situation back at headquarters?
Well, Jax, the deal is, these bad boys have more in common than we thought. Turns out that they were all card-carrying members of Kano's little club, the Black Dragon. Isn't that the gang that gave you so much trouble some time ago?
Sure was. Any sign of the escapees?
No, our troops have swept the area, but they seem to have slipped by us. We were hoping you would be able to track them down, being the man on the inside.
There's an exit ahead of me. I'll see where that takes me. I'll update you when I can.
Be careful you don't scratch those big metal arms of yours. Gemini out.
Determined to track down the remaining escapees, Jax follows the lead into the sewers. There, he gathers access codes to bypass security locks, making his way deeper underground. Eventually, he comes face to face with another Black Dragon member, Tazia. Much like No-Face before her, Tazia falls to Jax in combat. Afterwards, he checks in with Gemini again. She informs him that one of the captured Black Dragon members let slip that their gang is holed up in a corporate tower. Jax heads there next.
Jax to Gemini, do you copy?
Yes, Jax, I'm here. Any news?
Oh yeah. I just got in a close shave with a twin-bladed honey. Too bad I had to take her out though. That Tazia sure was a looker.
Jax, the mission, remember? If you can manage to concentrate for a little bit, Jax, I've got some news for you. It turns out that the Black Dragon has tried to put on a respectable face. One of the thugs let it spill that the Black Dragon is using one of the corporate buildings downtown as a cover for their base of operations, but he won't say which one.
Well, Tazia sure wanted to stop me from going any further, so I've got a feeling I must be very close to their hideout. I'll contact you the next chance I get. Jax out.
At the tower, Jack scours the parking lot garage, piercing together license plate numbers to access an elevator. Once inside the building, he rendezvous with a Special Forces agent named Sophia, who provides him with a key. This grants him access to another elevator, leading up to the rooftop, where Jarek, the same Black Dragon member from Mortal Kombat 4, is waiting for him. Jax takes him down and recovers a map detailing Kano's movements. With this intel, he sets his next destination, Xinjiang.
Gemini, I just transmitted my location coordinates to you via the Black Dragon's comlink. Have you received them yet?
That's affirmative on the pickup location, Jax. And it's about time. What's it take for a girl to get a phone call? Did you happen to run into any more of Kano's henchmen?
Nothing I couldn't handle. Just some punk with a sharp toy. Gemini, I'm going to upload the coordinates from a map I found. Seems like Kano is up to something big. I'm gonna have to take a little trip and meet up with him at the lost city of Xinjiang.
ETA on air transport pickup is 5 minutes. Next time, Jax, don't wait so long to make contact. I was getting a little worried. A woman doesn't like to be kept waiting. Gemini out.
Upon arriving in Xinjiang, Jax battles through a relentless wave of Black Dragon mercenaries armed with rocket launchers. He eventually reaches an ancient temple, solving puzzles by placing colored gems on altars. Progressing deeper inside, he unlocks a hidden path and enters a portal. There, he faces off against Tremor. Like his fallen comrades, Tremor is no match for Jax. After the fight, Jax contacts Gemini and informs her with shocking news. Kano has uncovered an ancient gateway leading to another dimension. Though she's skeptical, Jax is certain he must put an end to Kano once and for all.
What is your current status, Jax?
You're not gonna believe this. Kano has found an ancient gateway. It appears to be some sort of portal to another dimension. God only knows where it's gonna take me.
What? Are you out of your mind? Jax, you can't be thinking about going through that portal. It could be a trap. You might not be able to get back.
There's no time to wait, Gemini. Knowing Kano, this must be a means to his dream of world domination. This is a risk I've got to take.
You must have a cast iron head to match your arms. This is clearly a suicide mission. We need to get our experts over there to assess the situation. This is one ride even you're not big enough for, hero. I can't let you go in there alone.
Gemini, I'm really touched by this show of concern. People are gonna start talking, you know.
You are impossible. Don't you realize that our communications will be cut off? Our satellite systems weren't made for interdimensional travel.
Look, Gemini, there's no time to wait for backup. I got this far on my own and I am right on Kano's heels. My sole concern is to stop him from executing his plan and to bring him to justice. Look, don't worry your pretty little head. I promise I will bring you back something nice.
Just make sure you bring yourself back, and we'll talk from there. Gemini out.
In the final mission, Jax arrives in Outworld. He unlocks a portal using 2 more gemstones, leading him into the Prison of Souls. There, he locates another portal, this time leading directly to Kano. Kano taunts Jax, claiming that the other Black Dragon members were merely pawns and that he alone was the mastermind. But Jax isn't interested in his games. After a brutal battle, Jax defeats Kano and reclaims the stolen gem, using it to open a portal back to Earth. He contacts Gemini one last time, confirming his mission was a success. With Kano taken down, Jax finally heads home, bringing an end to Mortal Kombat Special Forces.
I know exactly what I'm gonna do with this thing. Jax to Gemini, come in.
Jax? Well, sounds to me like someone has made it all the way back home.
Oh yeah.
I have to be honest, there isn't much to analyze in Mortal Kombat Special Forces, so I didn't add an analysis portion to this video. But there was something that stood out to me. What stood out to me was how different this game was from the original vision that John Tobias had for the project. If you remember, the game was initially planned to have 2 playable characters, with Sonya Blade being one of them. A portion of this original build was actually completed before development shifted, and eventually this prototype leaked online, giving fans a look at what Special Forces was originally meant to be. So let's take a moment to dive into that prototype and see where this game was supposed to go. In the early version, both Sonya and Jax were playable, and each had their own storylines, though they converged at the same ending. Think Resident Evil 2, where Leon and Claire have separate experiences but share one ultimate conclusion. However, since this project is just a prototype, only one level exists. The game originally opened in Hong Kong, with the United States Special Forces operating undercover as part of a drug sting against the Black Dragon. The mission escalates when the Black Dragon steals an experimental nuclear warhead. As Sonya and another Special Forces agent engage in a shootout with Black Dragon members, Jax is en route to join them. But Sonya, suspecting a setup, attempts to retreat. Before Jax arrives, his teammate is shot down and his convoy is struck by a rocket launcher. The perspective then shifts to Sonya, who was captured and thrown into a cell. Kano demands to know how she got her intel and who sold him out. When she refuses to talk, he leaves her locked up, heading outside to speak with Black Dragon members Quinn and Cabal. Cabal warns Kano about the danger of the stolen nuke, but Kano, ever the opportunist, sees it as a golden opportunity rather than a threat.
We've got backup coming, you goons.
I think we already killed your backup, baby. And now we're going to kill your partners. And then we're gonna kill you. Unless you tell me who in my little gang ratted us out.
You're gonna kill me anyway.
Maybe, but you see, we knew someone was doing an inside job. And when they gave you this bogus location, well, we just figured it would give us a chance to chop up some Special Forces meat and catch a rat all in one sitting.
Why would a rat want to catch another rat?
I understand that respect has got to be earned. Don't make me earn it, baby. It'd be a shame to damage your goods.
Go to hell.
If hell is as hot as you, I'll go there any day. I think I'm in love.
What's going on, Kano? How'd they find us?
She ain't talking.
What about her partners? The ones still alive?
One of them's bleeding to death in a cell. The other one's upstairs waiting to be tortured.
This is serious business, Kano.
You want to give it back?
Maybe we should. These guys chased us around the world. They want their nuke back. I say we give it to them and get them off our tails.
You're going soft on us, Cabal, huh? We just massacred a whole squad of Special Forces goons, and you want to just give up and give them back their toy? You know what that gadget's worth? 500, 600 million. It's priceless.
Nothing is worth this much heat. We're putting the entire organization at risk.
You are getting weak, Cabal. This isn't some simple drug deal or selling a few missiles to a third world country. These are major players, man. The Russians, the Chinese, hell, even the French want this thing. Besides, the old man's already got a customer.
What? Who's the buyer?
You'll know when you need to know. In the meantime, you guys make sure the girl and her pal are locked down tight. Cabal, I think you're done here. Why don't you head on over to the club and chill for a while? Quinn and I are gonna smash some toes and get some answers. And then we're gonna torch this place before any more Special Forces Boy Scouts decide to show up.
Have it your way.
I always do. Take a few men to the second floor and make sure you get rid of all the paperwork sitting in the files there. I'll send for the girl shortly. Let the other one die.
If Sonya is selected as a playable character, we see how she escapes. She tricks a guard by pretending she needs to use the bathroom, convincing him to enter the cell. The moment he lets his guard down, she takes him out with a powerful kick and steals his key. Then she makes her way through the warehouse. Along the way, her pager goes off. Agent McCoy is in critical condition on the third floor. She fights her way up and encounters Quinn, taking him down, but before she can catch her breath, she overhears McCoy struggling with Kano holding a knife to his throat. She is in an intense standoff with Kano, and Jax arrives. Now, let's double back. If Jax is selected, we see how he survived the earlier rocket attack. After taking down the Black Dragon operatives in the warehouse, he also receives McCoy's distress signal and heads to the third floor, where he too faces Quinn as well. After dealing with him, Jax reaches the room where Sonya, Kano, and McCoy are locked in a tense standoff. And here is how the prototype ends. Jax tries to defuse the situation, urging Sonya to put her weapon down, but she's running on pure emotion and refuses to listen. She pulls the trigger and the screen cuts to black. And that's it.
You'll pay for this, Kano.
Hey, looky here, Sanchez. It's my #1 gal.
Let him go, Kano!
No way, baby. If I even see your finger flinch on that trigger, I'm gonna carve a new smile on your partner from ear to ear. Back off, big boy.
Hey, no problem. Just let him go.
I got him, Jax!
Sonya, lower your gun. Let him go.
No! Shoot him, Sonya!
Shut up!
Kill him! Never mind me! Don't let this animal go!
Bobby said shut up!
Lieutenant, lower your weapon and let him go. I promise you, we will pay another time, another place.
Jax, did you see what this monster did? He killed everyone! He butchered them!
We don't want to lose another.
Yeah, you don't want to lose another.
Shoot him, Sonya!
Shut up!
Shoot him!
No, Sonya!
While this version of the game was never officially released and remained unfinished, I figured it was worth showcasing how much Mortal Kombat Special Forces changed by the end. If you remember from my background information section, John Tobias originally had a very different vision for his project. In an early interview, he made a statement that in hindsight didn't age exactly well. He said, "I'd say right now we're about 40 to 50% exploration and the rest is fighting. Of course, that can change a lot as we are in early development. Who knows what it's going to end up as?" Well, we do know what it ended up as. And let's just say that his vision didn't make it to the finish line. Now, tell me in the comment section if this version would have appealed to you more than what was given to us in the first place. It just makes you wonder, what could have been? Okay, now that we looked at the game story, let's take a moment to break down the gameplay. Mortal Kombat Special Forces is a linear, single-player action game where players exclusively control Major Jackson Briggs. Jax retains some of his signature special moves, which are executed by pressing R2 along with the face button. These include light and hard ground punches as well as dash punches. However, these moves deplete the special meter, which is displayed at the top of the screen alongside Jax's health bar. To recharge the special meter, players must perform combos, adding a layer of strategy to the combat. Much like Mortal Kombat Mythology Sub-Zero, Jax's progression is tied to an experience system. Defeating enemies grants experience points which unlock new combos as the game progresses. This system encourages players to mix up their attacks, minimizing both damage output and special meter regeneration. However, outside of Jax's hand-to-hand combat, the game also incorporates a variety of weapons, giving players additional tactic options. For example, melee attacks, which Jax uses fists and kicks for combat. A detonator, which is a powerful bomb that destroys breakable walls. He also gets firearms. He has a machine gun, a shotgun, a sniper rifle, a grenade launcher, and a rocket launcher. Each firearm has its own specific ammo type, such as a 9mm clips for the machine guns, shotgun shells, and sniper cartridges. The stronger weapons, like the grenade and rocket launchers, are extremely powerful but have scarce ammo, making them ideal for boss fights or overwhelming enemy encounters. The game also attempts to incorporate light exploration elements. Players will need to search for keys, solve puzzles, and use detonators to blast open hidden pathways. Some levels even require inputting codes found on computer terminals to progress. At the end of each level, players face off against a boss. While these fights are meant to be challenging, most bosses can be easily beat with simple tactics, such as using Jax's flaming dash punch or cornering them utilizing a sniper rifle to knock them down, and even just unloading the machine gun on them and just holding it until their health reaches 0. While Special Forces aim to blend action-adventure mechanics with the Mortal Kombat style, critics found the level design lackluster and the gameplay repetitive. Still, the game stands as an early attempt to expand the Mortal Kombat universe beyond the traditional fighting game format. When it comes to replayability, Mortal Kombat Special Forces doesn't offer much. Once you beat the game, you're met with a simple "thanks for playing," and that's about it. There are no additional modes, unlockable content, or incentives to go through the game once again. That said, if you don't feel like grinding through the game, there is a cheat option available. After saving the game at the last level, you can access the cheat menu in game settings. Enabling it lets you start a new game with all combos unlocked and every weapon equipped, complete with 99 ammo. However, there's a catch. You won't receive any extra health packs, so be mindful of that. Aside from that, there's not much else to say about the gameplay. Once you've seen everything Special Forces has to offer, there's little reason to come back for another playthrough. Okay, it's no secret Mortal Kombat Special Forces received overwhelmingly negative reviews upon its release in 2000, with critics and players alike considering it one of the worst entries in the Mortal Kombat franchise. This game holds an abysmal Metacritic score of 28%, indicating generally unfavorable reviews. Critics blasted the game for its poor graphics, repetitive gameplay, and unbalanced difficulty. IGN's review highlighted the game's yucky-looking visuals and frustrating combat, particularly when facing armed enemies. The review also criticized the game's sound design, noting that while some classic Mortal Kombat voices were present, the overall audio quality was subpar. GameSpot gave the game a scathing 2.1 out of 10, while Electronic Gaming Monthly and Game Informer awarded it scores of 1.5 out of 10 and 1.75 out of 10 respectively. The game's reception was so poor that it reportedly led to Midway to put the Mortal Kombat series on ice until 2002. Despite the overwhelmingly negative reception, a few outlets provided more positive reviews. Video Games The Ultimate Guide gave the game a 7 out of 10, while Game Vortex rated it a 79%. However, these positive opinions were far outweighed by the negative consensus. In retrospect, some gaming publications have ranked Mortal Kombat Special Forces among one of the worst games ever made, with Games Radar Plus placing it as the 41st worst game in 2013. On top of that, some people felt like Special Forces was just a Metal Gear Solid ripoff. In an IGN review, they stated, "The gameplay closely resembles Metal Gear Solid with a Mortal Kombat style of fighting. The camera is always in a fixed relative position, meaning it decides where it should be positioned at all times when following Jax. There's a first-person view button which will switch Jax's view in order to place explosive or target enemies. Aiming is handheld using the same directional pad, resulting in Jax not being able to move while in first-person view. Each weapon features a crosshair in first-person view, while the sniper rifle can zoom in and target an opponent. The guards react to location-based shots, so aiming for the head will kill an enemy instantly, while shooting him in the stomach or leg will cause the guard to drop his gun or keep firing." To add insult to injury, John Tobias, one of the original creators of Mortal Kombat, admitted to never even playing Special Forces. He saw it as just an old page in history, explaining, "I never really played it. I saw it at E3 and maybe played it for like 5 minutes and never really played it after that, so I'm not really familiar with how it ended up." It's clear from this that Tobias wasn't personally invested in the game's development or its outcome. But it wasn't just Tobias who distanced himself from Special Forces. Ed Boon, the other creator, also publicly disavowed this project. Despite his name being featured as an Easter egg in the game, Boon never took ownership of it. In a tweet, he said, "I didn't work on Special Forces. The game and project were riddled with all kinds of problems. I could write a book on that." Sad face. Both Tobias and Boon, the creators behind Mortal Kombat, distanced themselves from Special Forces, and critics weren't kind to the game either. It's no surprise then that the fans weren't exactly thrilled with this one either. Based on reviews, it's clear that fans had vastly different opinions about Special Forces, with the overall sentiment leaning towards negative. The reception of Mortal Kombat Special Forces was incredibly divisive among fans. One reviewer gave it a brutal 1 out of 10 rating, calling it horrible and a disgrace to the Mortal Kombat franchise. Players criticized nearly every aspect of the game, from its clunky gameplay and poor AI to its frustrating controls. Some were so disappointed with the experience that they went so far as to advise others to not buy or even rent it. A few suggested that if someone received it as a gift, they should try to exchange it or sell it without even opening the box. The only redeeming quality for some was the graphics, which received praise for being decent amongst some gamers. On the flip side, there were players who saw the game in a much more positive light. Some acknowledged the widespread criticism but chalked it up to personal dislikes or the biases of game journalists. These players appreciate the game's variety, its graphics, sound effects, and control scheme. One reviewer even described Special Forces as a strong arcade action game and praised its plot and character progression, defending the attempt to expand the Mortal Kombat universe into a new genre. The stark difference in opinion shows that Mortal Kombat Special Forces was a highly polarizing title. While some players found it unbearable and an unplayable disaster, others appreciated its bold attempt to venture into new territory. However, given the overall poor reception and low review scores from professional critics, it's safe to say that the overwhelmingly negative view was more common among gamers at the time of its release, and as of today, it has not moved at all. So, like always, I'm gonna be honest right here. This was my first time experiencing Mortal Kombat Special Forces, and to be honest, I didn't have high expectations going in. Many people have called this the franchise's lowest point, so low that there was no marketing, there was no behind-the-scenes documentary, nothing. It's like Midway didn't even want to acknowledge it, not the fans, not the creators, and not even the franchise itself. That said, like always, I went in with an open mind. I try to give games a fair chance. But I hate to say it, Special Forces felt like a cheap knockoff of Metal Gear Solid, just without the stealth. The camera angles, the one button first person view, the boss battles, it all felt uninspired. The gameplay was repetitive and the story wasn't engaging. You can tell this game was thrown together with minimal effort. Most of the time, Jax is just talking to Gemini over a static screen with subtitles. That kind of presentation is both easy and lazy, making it clear that Midway was just trying to squeeze a little more money out of the Mortal Kombat brand. And it didn't work. If any game should be erased from Mortal Kombat's canon, it's this one. But it does make me wonder, what would Mortal Kombat Special Forces have been if it didn't have the Mortal Kombat name tied to it? It's just a thought. So I chalk this game's failure to circumstance, and let me explain. In 2017, the Justice League hit theaters and it flopped. What happened? Zack Snyder, the original director, left the company through production and Joss Whedon took over, completely changing the film. Fans speculated for years what Snyder's true vision looked like, and eventually we got the Snyder Cut. Now take that same idea and apply it to Mortal Kombat Special Forces. John Tobias was leading the charge on this game. He had a vision, but he left midway before the project was finished, and someone else took over, transforming the game beyond recognition. That's why I made sure to include the prototype footage in this video. I didn't even know it existed until I was doing research for this video. And let's be real, since Mortal Kombat was struggling in the late 90s, there was never going to be a release the Tobias cut movement. But looking at what could have been, it's clear the original concept was better. From a storytelling perspective, the prototype had stronger foundations. It gave enemies actual motivations. If you remember my Metal Gear Solid 3 video, I talked about how important it is to build up your villain just as much as your hero. That was missing from Special Forces. But the prototype seemed like it was heading in the right direction. It even looked like it was going to explore Cabal's origin story, how he left the Black Dragon, how he actually became a hero. That alone would have given the game some real life. Honestly, the prototype feels more alive in just one level than Special Forces does in 5. It even played more like Tomb Raider, just like some of the creators would say. Jax and Sonya had crazy vertical jumps that made platforming a real mechanic. This game itself had potential. It could have been better than Mythologies, maybe even decent. Instead, Midway gutted it. They even recycled Jax's original fighting style from the prototype and gave it to an NPC enemy in Special Forces. When Ed Boon said he could write a book on what went wrong with this game, I'd read it, no question. I love to know what was really happening at Midway during this time. When John Tobias said, "Who knows what it's going to end up as?" I don't think this is what he had in mind. Another thing that brings this game down, there's no in-game map, so you spend half of your time just wandering in circles trying to figure out where to go. So in essence, this game also continued that trial and error landscape that was found in Mortal Kombat Mythologies, so it didn't actually progress as much as the creators wanted it to in the first place. But honestly, what more can I say about Special Forces that hasn't already been said? If it wasn't tied to Mortal Kombat, it'd just be remembered as a cheap Metal Gear Solid ripoff. If John Tobias had stayed on board, maybe we could have gotten a great spin-off. But history played out differently, and we were left with Special Forces. Would I recommend this game? Not really. If you're curious about the game, just watch a Let's Play on YouTube. Would I recommend the prototype? Yes. But temper your expectations. It's like The Sopranos finale. It just ends, leaving you wondering what could have been and what happened. In the end, Special Forces remains the black sheep of the entire Mortal Kombat franchise. If you made it to the end of this video, I appreciate you for rocking with me. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps out. If you're new here and love retrospectives, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Next week, we're switching gears and heading back to the Rockstar takeover with Midnight Club 2. Then, in 2 weeks, we're diving back into Mortal Kombat with Deadly Alliance. If that sounds like your kind of speed, ring that notification bell so you don't miss out. This is the Retro Phantom, signing out.